Welcome everyone to Tech Uncensored. My name is Hethy Jones. Today we're talking about effective marketing strategies for clean tech solutions. So clean energy isn't just a dream. Maybe it was 20 years ago, but today it's a thriving reality. We're actually standing at this threshold as the global community races to actually meet their ambitious climate goals. And with the convergence of new policies, new investments, and incentives away from fossil fuels, Canadian government actually estimates that up to $140 billion in annual investments are needed to reach our net zero emission goals. So as we begin to see a lot more clean tech innovations on the forefront of these investments, this creates a huge opportunity to promote clean tech solutions effectively. And so for clean tech founders, it means not only raising awareness for solutions, but also educating many mainstream and prospective investors on some of the complexities of these solutions and the opportunities they create to actually curb some of the impacts of climate change. So clean tech founders face their own unique marketing challenges. Many of them are emerging entrants into a market that faces huge regulatory hurdles. It has huge supply side dependencies, and it has longer sales cycles because industry at the same time is investing in transformations. So marketing strategies need to support many of these extended cycles while also educating the end consumers. So I'm pleased to welcome today Urs Villager, and I'll add him to the stage. He's a seasoned content strategist. He's a copywriter. He's also an advisor to Altitude Accelerator, and he focuses these days on clean tech and renewable energy companies. So today we're going to cover some of these current trends when it comes to renewable energy and clean tech, and the challenges and opportunities that each of these clean tech founders face as they build awareness for the changes in the industry and also their unique technologies. So let me welcome Urs. Thank you for coming today.
Thanks for having me, Hethy.
That's great. So let's start with yourself. Tell us a little bit about who you are, what you've done, and what led you to become somewhat of a marketing guru when it comes to clean tech marketing.
So I do have a master's in business. That's basically my background academically. I have spent the last 10 years in e-commerce. I'm somewhat of an entrepreneur. I was running my own e-commerce company that I've sold a few years ago. And I was always, while I was doing that, I was always looking for an opportunity to do something for the planet, to do something against climate change. And given my strong marketing focus over the past years, I've decided to go into copywriting and marketing strategy, helping startups and small companies in the clean tech sector to thrive and to be able to market their products more effectively, or products or solutions, I should say.
It's great that you're able to make that switch, and I'm sure a lot of these founders are pleased with someone as seasoned as you to be able to help them navigate on the marketing side, because we know a lot of early stage founders need that support. So let's talk about some of the marketing challenges when it comes to specifically clean tech companies and the need for public education. Do you see the difference in marketing for clean tech versus, let's say, marketing for products and services for other sectors that are more widely known?
Yeah, obviously there are differences. I mean, purely the definition already says, like, the mission often focuses around something that has to do with sustainability and some type of environmental focus, which then leads the messaging to highlight, like, the positive impact that those products have or the solutions have. Whereas conventional marketing would rely more on product features and product benefits and such. So, which obviously you have in Cleantech as well, but there's the additional aspect of that sustainability focus. And as you say, there's the education approach that these companies have to follow is very important, because often we're dealing with new technologies that are new for the public to use, new for businesses that use them. So there's a fair amount of education that we need to bring out there. So I have an example from a residential solar company that I worked with. We produced dozens of blogs just explaining how solar on a residential rooftop works, how much energy it produces, and how essentially at the end of the day, when you have that and in a location where it works well, how you save money. So those are a few of the aspects. I mean, there's so much more to it, obviously. For when we're looking at the younger companies in the startup phase, you often have to rely on thought leadership, because you might be the first one doing something, or you're at least early in the market. So you have to build the credibility, and I often help companies develop case studies or white papers that they can then use to build credibility. That would be sort of like my third thought towards that topic. You also mentioned the regulatory landscape, how that can have an effect. And here, it's not just negative, right? It's not just regulations that you have to comply with, but it's also government incentives, which is a positive thing. There's a plethora of government incentives out there for clean tech, which has a strong influence on your marketing. We'll probably see later how that works out in detail. Another important point is that you often, as a clean tech startup, at some point when you have a solution that you're ready to bring to market, you have to focus on early adopters. I'm going to use Tesla as an example. Again, in the early days, Elon Musk had this wonderful roadster that he wanted to market, and he knew, first of all, he knew he had to have a sexy product that people want to use over some gas-powered cars. But that was his marketing. He needed to find those early adopters, and he would market to them 24/7. I'm sure you could read stories about that online and everywhere. But that was his target group. He was focusing on those early adopters. So that's, I think, very common in this space. Another important factor is relationships, not just like often solutions are B2B. The residential solar, for example, would be B2C. But it's also often to governments if you work in stuff that's more infrastructure related. It could be EV charging. So now you're all of a sudden you're marketing to government, which is another a layer that you have to be prepared for. Or it could be you could just see it as an opportunity. Not everybody has to go that route. Again, another important factor for early startups: who's your first audience? It's probably venture capitalists, because you're looking for funding. So how are you talking to these people? How are you attracting investors? How are you demonstrating that your solution is scalable? Those become important questions. Yeah. So those would be my opening thoughts.
And it's interesting that you talk about investors being kind of like your first audience, because of the fact that it's going to take a while to actually get to market, get to a pilot, even get to commercialization. So just the amount of time and investment to get to a place where, let's say, most companies in B2B SaaS can get there within a year, clean tech companies will probably take twice as long at the very least, right? So, okay, so let's get to the next question, because this is an important one because of the time that we live in. We know that we're transitioning now from fossil fuels to renewable energy. So I'm going to point to a stat that came from the International Energy Agency. And in 2023, they indicated that we saw CO2 emissions rise by 0.9%. It was a record high goal. It was a record high compared to previous years. At the same time, we saw renewable energy sources grow significantly. Solar increased by 22%. Wind power generation increased by 14%. However, we also saw this growth in coal consumption, 2%. Rise in oil demand, 1.5%. So given this recent data, when you're seeing this growth in both renewable, non-renewable energy, and how renewable energy companies need to craft messages that acknowledge that this is the complex reality of what we're dealing with today. How do you square that in a message and still try to improve or promote the adoption of clean technologies?
Well, you could argue there's good news in those numbers and there's bad news in those numbers. I mean, the facts are that we're adding every day, we're adding 200,000 people to our planet, right? And the other factor is that larger third world and second world countries are improving their standard of living, which also comes with increased energy demand. So both those factors just increase the energy demand as such, and us trying to come up with solutions and trying to come up with the energy that's required. Okay, you could say, okay, there has been an increase in coal, but the increase in coal was 2% and the increase in solar was 22%. So yes, we're chasing it. We're definitely chasing it, but there have been absolutely massive deployments of renewable energies, and we just have to keep going.
Mm-hmm. And so, like, from your perspective, given that clean tech is one of the fastest growing sectors, if you were to work with, let's say, clean tech companies that are very early stage, they have limited resources. They may not necessarily have, let's say, the time, the energy, or even the subject matter expert to actually develop a good white paper to prove their point. What do you think some of the crucial elements are that they should focus on when it comes to their marketing strategies as a company does?
It's tough, right? There's usually no marketing budgets. There's not a lot of time. It's a tough question. I mean, again, it depends a little bit where you are. If you have a solution ready to go, your focus is different than when you're still hustling to find investors. So if the one thing you always need to do is identify your targets, right? Who are you going to target first? Is it those early adopters, or is it an established target group? Know who they are. Where is your business going to come from? That is the key question. Who are the decision makers if you're dealing with corporations or the government, and you have to go after them. And I see a lot of companies, they go to trade shows. It's a very common thing to do because it's great to explain, like in person, to explain your product, your solution, and make connections. Given that it's often, as you say, like we need a bit of a longer term approach very often, this is a good strategy because you're making connections, and then you have to keep nurturing those connections, feed them information. One such thing could be to have press releases. It's also often done in early stages, which is also a tool to inform in possible investors. It's an investor relations tool, right? Just keeping everybody up to date on what's going on in the company. At some point, you're gonna have to have an online presence, right? I worked with a startup in the energy storage business, and I helped them build their first website completely from scratch. It's just important, if you do that, that your wording is connecting immediately with your target audience, and therefore you have to know your target audience, otherwise you can't connect properly. So those are some of the things that I think come first. Obviously, there's social media. Some people use blogs. They use Instagram or Facebook to post updates. For example, on their story as an entrepreneur, they say, "Oh, I'm doing this. I've just been doing that," and it can be interesting. You can get an interesting following from that. Just people are like, "Oh, what's this person doing?" So if you're B2B, start going as soon as possible. Start going on LinkedIn, because that's where all your decision makers are.
Yeah, I just when you mentioned LinkedIn, and the same thing with Instagram, because it's a huge opportunity to actually develop community. There's so many groups that are in LinkedIn that may be relevant to what you're doing. You could actually potentially create like a collaborative marketing campaign with them, especially if they're within the same sector, because everybody is in need of money, but if they don't have it, they could actually develop these collaborations to make a nice big marketing campaign out of, let's say, 2 or 3 companies combined. So that's one way to deal with it, I think, too. So, okay, so tell me about how you tell the story, right? The importance of storytelling. This is one way that really connects you to the people that you're trying to engage in. There are things like video, podcasting, white papers that you talked about to inform. So how do you tailor your content for each platform? And which platforms did you find that were effective for some types of content and not others?
Yeah, so that's a very interesting point. So the way I would structure it is, first of all, on a top level, I would first of all ask myself, am I marketing B2B or B2C? That determines in some form which channels you're going to go on. You mentioned podcasting. I like podcasting. It's great. I listen to a lot of podcasts. It's how I educate myself on what's going on in the EV charging business, in the solar business. So to me, I almost feel like they have become, like those industry specific podcasts have become the modern industry magazines. That's how, like, I think the eyeballs have gone away from those magazines more to podcasts. I want to get educated on that topic. I'm going to listen to that podcast. So yeah, great tool. You don't have to run your own podcast. There's lots of podcasts you could reach out to, see if they will have you or if they will mention you. Yeah. Then it comes down to like condensing or telling your story. Yeah.
I find that those things are actually invaluable, because even though they do take time, it's a way to actually connect, because you are talking, because they see you visibly, whether or not it's in video or they hear you through a podcast. And then you create that credibility at the same time, developing your content and not necessarily spending a lot of dollars doing it, right? And I do find that they are engaging. If you're on Instagram, you almost should be using some form of video, because anything that's static does not necessarily work, right? The more engaging, the better.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, those are great ways to tell your story.
So tell me, so, oh, sorry about that.
Yeah, you also asked about tailoring the content for different platforms. So again, knowing your audience is key, right? That's the number one thing. I can give an example here of one of my clients in the mobile solar business. So they develop solar solutions for fleets. So they're selling to fleet managers at corporations, B2B. So the question becomes, what's the most compelling to that target group? And it's cost. So the question becomes, how can I reduce the cost of operating the fleet? Now, solar offers one such solution. Without going too much into detail, essentially solar panels on the roof of a delivery truck can charge the battery of that truck, that the battery operates the lift gate. It helps save fuel costs, and it helps save on vehicle maintenance because there's fewer emergencies with like batteries that are run down, etc. So what does this client do? They develop a calculator on their website where fleet manager can enter the specs of their vehicles and can choose from like a different solution, solar solutions, and see how much money they can save with adding that solar package. So essentially it's an ROI calculator for the fleet manager. Great way of doing things, right? So they add a press release about it, a little bit of communication around it, and off you go to the races, right?
So so tell me about one of your other clients. I think you mentioned it earlier, a company named Switch Energy. So they're an EV charging and energy management company. Tell us a little bit about them first, and what you did to help them, let's say, improve their overall marketing strategy.
Okay, yeah. So I worked with Switch on a complete website overhaul. So I find they're a fantastic example of a Canada-based startup, right? They have developed now phenomenal momentum as a provider of EV charging solutions for condo buildings and workplaces. And their story is that, like with the rise of the EV, they realized that all these existing condo buildings will be in real trouble real soon when all the residents want to buy EVs and charge their EVs. So they came up with a solution that manages the electricity in the building and basically feeds the EV chargers. And by now, Switch has gone through a few financing rounds. They were a startup at one point. So they have gone through all those stages. And now they've had an old website that was okay for what they did before, but now they're out there. Their solutions are in a variety of different buildings and different workplaces, and in the USA and Canada, right? So they're growing at a rapid pace, and their website did no longer reflect who they were today and are going to be in 5 years. So we worked on a website, again, concise language, very targeted to their audience was key.
And so, okay, so it looks like you've worked for a number of companies that are in this space. You also have a solar company, a solar client, right? Go Power, and they are solar solutions for recreational vehicles, correct? So can you tell me about their technology, what they actually do, and what was your marketing strategy for them?
Yeah, that's an interesting one because they primarily sell their solar solutions, which are solar panels and inverters and accessories that go on the recreational vehicles. But they sell mainly to dealers and to distributors. However, obviously they want to establish a bit of a brand preference. within the public as well. So they have a dual approach. What we did primarily with them in the beginning was develop like a blog strategy, have like an educational strategy that goes after the consumer to establish that. In marketing, it's called pull, right? You want to establish pull from the base that then entices the dealers and distributors to look at your product. But what we had done there was write a white paper on smart tech for RVs. Smart tech for RVs is basically the same that you would have in your home, like you would know it from your home as like a Nest or something like that. So it's basically an app-based solution that helps you control stuff in your house, and in that case, it helps control stuff in the RV. Now, with an RV, one of the main concerns is their power system. So when you're traveling off grid, you want to still be using your fridge, your stove, your coffee maker, maybe even an AC. So power becomes a commodity, and solar is a good solution for that, because when your vehicle's parked somewhere, it charges the battery and so forth. So this tool that GoPower has, or the solution that GoPower has, that lets you take full control of all these items in the power system. Be it the inverter, you can see how much power you've got in the battery, how much power is coming from the solar panels into the battery, and so forth. So it's an interesting topic. People they want to understand it, they want to use it, and distributors and dealers, they need to know about it, because they want to sell the RVs and upgrade the RVs to those systems and sell the accessories. So the white paper was a good solution, because it was educational for the dealers and for the distributors, more so than for the public. For the public, the format is a bit too big. Like a blog post would be more suitable. But what they then did, they cooperated with a reputable magazine in the RV industry, and to publish that white paper on their website. The magazine ran an email blast, which then resulted in increased website traffic of over 400% for 2 weeks. So that was a huge success.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So from your perspective, based on everything that we have learned today, if you were to sum up your recommendations for Cleantech founders, what would be, I would say, your closing thoughts on this?
Yeah, keep in mind the educational aspect of it. You have likely a product or a solution that needs to be explained, even in the first minutes, or I'm just kind of saying minutes, but in the first years of your company, you have to explain it to investors, but later to consumers. Being very clear about what it does, and just that educational piece is very, very important. The other thing is, I truly believe that a lot of companies will have to, after going through the first stages, after having raised a bit of money, you will have to target early adopters, very likely, if the product has anything to do with sustainability or renewable energy, and it's a new product. You will have to find those early adopters that will take a risk, but are excited by your product, and you can help that excitement along. Those will be the people that create those use cases for you, that then you can later use as a proof of concept. So that's an important point. And again, I've already mentioned it. The other thing is really the impact of venture capital and investor relations at the beginning. Those are the people you're marketing to, and they're just people. They want to understand how your solution works, and if you're good at explaining that, that's the first hurdle. You've taken the first hurdle, right? So
that's perfect.
So and be able to demonstrate how you can scale it. That's also very important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the nice thing about trying to find investment in clean tech, it's so much easier now than it was 10, 15 years ago. I think just because the government, just because of the goals that we have, but also the increasing amount of venture capital out there that supports the need to actually make sure that we survive at least the next, hopefully, 100 years, right? So I think that's all the time that we have today. And I want to thank Urs for joining me. Um, and for those who are in the clean tech space, we frequently post opportunities in funding, let's say lab testing support. So go to our website, altitudeaccelerator.ca, and subscribe to our newsletter. And for our audience, if you want us to explore different topics, please email us at communications@altitudeaccelerator.ca. We're so grateful for the time that you give us on a biweekly basis. Tech Uncensored is powered and supported and produced by Altitude Accelerator. We're hosted on Spotify, so you can find us wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, I'm Hessie Jones. Everyone, have fun and stay safe.